My name is Isaac Clarke. I'm 71 years old, and 3 days ago, my daughter-in-law told me my son was already in the ground. "We buried him Tuesday," Bethany said, like she was telling me the mail was late. "Small service, close friends only." I was standing in my kitchen holding a can of soup I hadn't opened yet. My hand went numb around the phone. Buried? Samuel's buried? Isaac, don't make this harder than it is. She never called me Dad. 6 years married to my son, and she never once called me Dad. "He was in the hospital," I said. "They told me Monday he was stable. I talked to the nurse myself." Things changed fast. Her voice didn't crack, didn't even slow down. "Look, I have people here. I don't have time to walk you through it." "Why didn't anybody call me?" "I figured you'd find out." I sat down at my kitchen table. The soup can was still in my hand. I hadn't eaten that day, and after that call, I didn't eat for 2 more. "I want to tell you something about myself before I go further, because it matters for what happens next. I'm not a man who fights. I never have been. My whole life I've been the quiet one, the guy who lets the waiters shortchange him rather than make a scene, who apologizes when someone bumps into him. My wife Carol used to say I'd apologize to a wall if I walked into it. She passed 11 years ago. After that, it was just me and Samuel. And then Samuel married Bethany, and slowly, one excuse at a time, it became just me. I don't have a big circle of people, never did. A neighbor, Morgan Fraser, who checks on me sometimes. A man named Lucas from my old church group I see maybe twice a year. That's close to the whole list. So when Bethany hung up that phone, there wasn't a house full of people I could call to make sense of it with me. There was just me, a can of soup, and a silence so loud it felt like it had weight. I called the hospital the next morning. My hands were shaking so bad I dialed wrong twice. "I'm calling about my son, Samuel Clarke. I need to know what happened." The woman on the line went quiet for a second, typing. "Sir, I'm not showing any patient by that name discharged or deceased in the last month." "That's not possible. He was in the ICU, room 412. "I'm sorry, sir. Nothing's coming up." I hung up and sat there staring at my own hands like they belonged to somebody else. Now, I want to be honest with you, because that's the only way I know how to tell this. I did not go to that hospital and demand answers. I did not drive to Bethany's house and pound on the door. A man like me doesn't do that. A man like me sits in his kitchen and wonders if he did something wrong, wonders if maybe he really wasn't wanted at his own son's funeral. That's the kind of quiet that gets used against you. I understand that now. I didn't understand it then. I tried the funeral homes in town, 4 of them. Nobody had a Samuel Clarke on the books that week. On the 3rd day, I drove to Bethany's house myself, told myself I wouldn't leave until she told me where my son was. She opened the door in workout clothes, phone in her hand like she had somewhere to be. "Isaac, now really isn't a good time." "Where is he buried, Bethany? Just tell me that much." "You need to stop calling the hospital. You're embarrassing yourself. People there know Samuel, and now they think his own father can't get his facts straight." "I called because nobody there has any record of him. Not the hospital, not 4 funeral homes." For half a second, just half a second, something moved behind her eyes. Then it was gone again, and she was calm again. Calmer than a person should be talking about her husband's death. "You must have the wrong hospital," she said. "You're 71, Isaac. Sometimes things get confused." That was the first time she said it like that. Sometimes things get confused. Like I was the problem. Like grief had made me senile instead of made me want the truth. "I raised that boy alone after his mother passed," I said. "I want to know where my son is." She looked at me for a long moment, and what she said next, I still hear some nights when I can't sleep. "Maybe it's better if you don't know right now, Isaac. Maybe it's better for everyone." Then she shut the door. Not slammed it, shut it, soft and final, like she was closing a drawer. I stood on that porch for a long time, long enough that a neighbor across the street stopped raking leaves to watch me. I didn't know it yet, standing there, but that woman behind that door was about to try something with my son's money, my son's house, and my son's name that would have worked on any other quiet old man in America. She just picked the wrong one to underestimate. I didn't know that either, not on that porch. On that porch, I just felt like nobody's father and nobody's anything. That night, my phone rang once, a blocked number, nobody on the other end when I picked up. I told myself it was nothing. I was wrong about that, too. If you're watching this, drop the city you're watching from in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And stay with me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Samuel's old bedroom. I still call it that, even though he moved out 14 years ago. And I went through a shoebox of photographs, like the answer was hiding in one of them. There's a picture of him at 8, missing his front teeth, holding up a fish he caught at the lake. There's one from his college graduation, his arm around my shoulder, both of us grinning like fools. And there's one from his wedding day, Bethany in white, her hand gripping his arm like she was afraid he'd float away if she let go. I remember that grip. I didn't think much of it at the time. I do now. In the morning, I called the one person I trust with paperwork, Morgan Fraser, my neighbor. Morgan used to work at a title company before she retired, and she's sharper than anybody gives a 70-year-old woman credit. "Isaac, something's not right here," she said, after I told her everything. "You don't get a runaround like that from a hospital unless somebody's covering something up. You need to see a lawyer, today." I don't like lawyers, never have. They talk fast and I talk slow, and I always feel like I'm being handled instead of helped. But Morgan drove me herself to a small office on the other side of Cincinnati, a man named Harrison Wiley, recommended by her nephew. Harrison was maybe 50, reading glasses pushed up on his head, a stack of files on his desk that looked like they hadn't moved in years. "Mr. Clarke," he said, shaking my hand, "tell me everything, from the beginning. Don't leave anything out, even if it feels small." So I did. The phone call, the funeral home, the hospital with no record, the look on Bethany's face on that porch. Harrison listened without writing anything down until I got to the part about the funeral homes. Then he started taking notes fast. "You said 4 funeral homes had no record of him. Did you give him the correct spelling? Middle name?" "Samuel Robert Clarke, same as it's always been." Harrison sat back. "Mr. Clarke, I want to pull something up if you don't mind waiting a few minutes." He came back 15 minutes later with a printout, and his face had changed. Gone was the polite, easy expression. He looked like a man who'd found something he didn't want to find. "There's a probate filing, filed 2 days ago, in your son's name. It names Bethany Clarke as sole executor and sole beneficiary of an estate valued at just under $600,000. I didn't understand half those words. What does that mean in plain talk? It means somebody filed paperwork saying your son is dead and that everything he owned, his house, his savings, a life insurance policy, goes to her. All of it. And Mr. Clarke," he paused like he wasn't sure how to say the next part gently, "there's no death certificate attached. None. In 30 years of practice, I've never seen a probate filing move this far without one." The room felt smaller all of a sudden. "You're telling me he's trying to get his money," I said, "without ever proving he's dead?" "I'm telling you it looks that way, and I need to ask you something, and I need you to think hard before you answer. Has anyone asked you to sign anything recently? Any papers, even ones that seemed unimportant?" I thought about it, and my stomach dropped clean through the floor. 3 weeks ago, before any of this happened, Bethany had shown up at my house, first time in over a year, with a folder of papers, said Samuel was updating some insurance and needed my signature as a witness, told me it was routine. I signed where she pointed, the way I always do when somebody in a suit or somebody married into my family tells me it's routine. I never read it. God help me, I never read a word of it. I signed something, I said, for her, weeks ago. Harrison's jaw tightened. I need copies of anything you have. And Mr. Clarke, I have to ask you directly, is your son actually deceased? Have you seen a body, a death certificate, anything? I opened my mouth to answer and nothing came out, because for the first time since that first phone call, a different thought landed on me, one so heavy I had to grip the arms of the chair. What if nobody had ever proven to me that my son was dead at all? Because he wasn't. I don't know, I said, and my voice came out smaller than I meant it to. I never saw anything, just her on the phone telling me. Harrison's jaw tightened. I'm going to say something, and I need you to brace yourself for it. In cases like this, filings this fast, this clean, no death certificate, a witness signature obtained under false pretense, I've seen this pattern before, and it doesn't usually mean what the family's been told. He turned around. I don't think we're looking at a fraud against a dead man's estate, Mr. Clarke. I think we might be looking at something being done to a living one. I sat there in that office chair, 71 years old, and felt the floor of my whole life tilt sideways. If Samuel was alive, where was he? And why would anyone, even Bethany, go this far to convince me and everyone else that he wasn't? My phone buzzed in my pocket right then, a text from a number I didn't recognize. Stop asking questions about Samuel. You don't understand what you're doing. I looked up at Harrison, my hand shaking around the phone. Somebody just told me to stop looking, I said. Harrison didn't look surprised. He looked like a man whose suspicions had just been confirmed. Then we're definitely not stopping. Harrison didn't waste time. Within 2 days, he'd filed something called an objection to the probate, a piece of paper that basically told the court, not so fast. He also hired a private investigator, a woman he'd worked with before, and told me the fastest way to find out if Samuel was alive was to trace the last place he was actually seen. That place was a rehab facility outside Louisville, Riverbend Recovery and Wellness. I'd never heard of it in my life. Your son checked into an inpatient program there 11 weeks ago, the investigator told me over the phone. Her name was Holly Reynolds, and she talked fast, like every word cost her money. Voluntary admission according to their intake records. But there's something strange, Mr. Clarke. There's a hold on his file. No visitors, no calls, no mail. Authorized by his listed emergency contact. Let me guess, I said. Bethany Clarke, yes. I want to tell you what that felt like, hearing that. My son, sick, struggling, wherever he was, locked away from the world, and the only name allowed to make decisions about him wasn't mine, it was hers. And she'd used that power, whatever it was, to make sure not one soul who actually loved him could reach him. Harrison and I drove down together, 2.5 hours, and I didn't say more than 20 words the whole way. I kept thinking about all the years I'd let this woman decide what my relationship with my own son looked like, all the holidays that got complicated, all the phone calls that went to voicemail because he was resting. I told myself I was respecting boundaries, being the easy father-in-law, not making waves. I'm not an easy man to rile up. Carol used to joke you could set off a firework next to me and I'd apologize for flinching. But sitting in that car, watching the exits go by, I felt something in my chest I didn't have a name for. It wasn't quite anger. It was closer to shame. Shame that I'd let so much distance grow between me and my own boy because I was too polite, too scared of being difficult to ask harder questions sooner. Riverbend was a squat brick building behind a chain-link fence, more institutional than I expected. A woman at the front desk, kind eyes, tired voice, name tag that said Gracie Elliott, looked at us for a long moment after Harrison explained who we were. "I'm going to be honest with you," Gracie said quietly, glancing toward a hallway like she didn't want to be overheard. "That hold on his file has bothered me since it was put in place. It's unusual. Family holds like that are supposed to be reviewed every 30 days. His hasn't been reviewed once." "Can we see him?" I asked. My voice cracked on the word see, and I didn't care.
Gracie hesitated. "Legally, with the hold active, I can't authorize a visit without the emergency contact's consent or a court order." She looked at Harrison. "You said you filed something with the court?" "An objection to a probate filing," Harrison said. "Not a custody order. It's not the same thing, but it might be enough to get a judge's attention fast, given what you're telling us." Gracie nodded slowly, like she was deciding something. "I can't let you back there today. I'm sorry. But I can tell you this much, because I think you deserve to know it, and because, frankly, something about this whole situation hasn't sat right with me for weeks." She lowered her voice further. "Samuel Clarke has asked, multiple times, on record, why his father never visits. He's asked staff to help him call home. Every request has been denied per the hold." I had to sit down. There was a plastic chair against the wall, and I dropped into it like my legs had been cut out from under me. He'd been asking for me. My son had been sitting in that building, however many weeks, asking why his own father never came, and somebody had been telling him no over and over, and he had no way of knowing I never got the message. He might have thought I abandoned him. He might have thought I didn't care. Or worse, I made myself think it, sitting in that chair, because I needed to think the worst so I could be ready for it. He might have been told I was dead, too. Told some lie that matched whatever lie was being told about me on my end. Two people, kept apart by the same set of hands. I need to know if he's okay, physically. Is my son safe in there? Gracie's face did something complicated. She glanced down the hallway again, then back at us. "He's safe," she said carefully, "but I'll say this much. The treatment plan on his chart doesn't match what I've observed clinically. I've said as much internally. Nobody's listened." She paused like she was weighing how much trouble she was about to invite into her life. "There's a care review board meeting Thursday. If you had legal standing by then, you could request to attend and raise concerns directly." "Thursday," Harrison repeated, already pulling out his phone to check the calendar. Gracie leaned in one more inch. "Mr. Clarke, for what it's worth, in the sessions I've sat in on, your son doesn't talk like a man who's given up on his family. He talks like a man who thinks his family gave up on him." She hesitated. "You should also know his wife was here yesterday, alone. She met with the facility director for almost an hour, behind closed doors. I don't know what was discussed, but she left looking like she'd won something." I looked at Harrison. Harrison looked at me. Whatever Bethany had walked in there to arrange, we had less than 48 hours to find out what it was, before Thursday's review, and whatever she'd already set in motion made it too late to matter. Harrison worked through the night. By morning, he had an emergency motion filed, asking the court to suspend Bethany's authority over Samuel's care until a judge could review everything: the missing death certificate, the probate filing on a man who wasn't dead, the no visitor hold, all of it. We got a hearing, not the full trial kind, just a short one in front of a judge named Ryan Willis in a courtroom that smelled like old carpet and coffee. I'd never been in a courtroom in my life. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Harrison told me beforehand, "You probably won't have to say much. Let me do the talking." I was grateful for that. I've never been a man who does well with people staring at him. Bethany was there. She wore a gray suit, hair pulled back, and when she saw me, she didn't look afraid. She looked annoyed, like I was a chore she hadn't finished. Her lawyer stood first, a younger man, confident, the kind of confident that comes from never having lost much. He said Bethany had been acting in her husband's best medical interest, that the visitor hold was standard practice for patients in early recovery, and that the probate filing was a precautionary estate measure filed prematurely due to a clerical misunderstanding at the hospital. A misunderstanding. $600,000 and my son locked away, and he called it a misunderstanding, standing there like it was nothing. Then Harrison stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He just laid it out, piece by piece, the way you lay tools out on a table before a job. The hospital had no record matching the story I was told. 4 funeral homes, no record. A probate filing with no death certificate, filed while the person in question was alive and, according to facility staff, repeatedly asking to contact his father. A visitor hold that had never once been reviewed as required. "Your Honor," Harrison said, "this is not a family managing a difficult medical situation. This is a pattern designed to isolate a vulnerable man from the one relative capable of protecting his interests while his estate was quietly reassigned." Judge Willis didn't say much through any of it. He had a way of looking at people that made you feel like he already knew the answer and was just waiting to see if you'd tell the truth on your own. When he finally spoke, he looked directly at Bethany. "Mrs. Clarke, I'd like you to explain in your own words why Isaac Clarke was told his son was deceased and buried when hospital and facility records indicate no such thing occurred." The whole room went quiet. I watched Bethany's face, and for the first time since that first phone call, I saw the crack, just a flicker. Then she smoothed it right back over. "I never said he was dead. I said we had arrangements underway. He must have misunderstood." That was a lie. I know what I heard. I know what a phone call sounds like when someone tells you your child is in the ground. I opened my mouth before I even meant to. "You said we already buried him. Small ceremony, close friends only. Those were your words." My voice came out rougher than I expected, cracked at the edges, but it came out. I've replayed that call in my head every night for 2 weeks. I didn't misunderstand a single word of it. The judge held up a hand, not unkindly, and looked back to Bethany. "Mrs. Clarke, do you have a response to that specific statement?" She didn't, really. She said something about being under a lot of stress, about people saying things imprecisely during hard times, but it came out then, and I could see even her own lawyer's shoulders drop a little, like a man watching his case take on water. The judge granted the emergency order. Effective immediately, Bethany's authority over Samuel's care was suspended. The probate filing was frozen pending a full fraud investigation, and I, Isaac Clarke, 71 years old, the quiet man who apologizes to walls, was granted temporary authority to visit my son starting that same afternoon. I don't remember standing up. Harrison told me later I just sat there for a second like I hadn't heard him say we'd won. Outside the courthouse, Bethany caught up to me on the steps. Her lawyer wasn't with her. For a second, she looked less like the woman who'd shut a door in my face and more like somebody cornered. "You have no idea what you've started," she said, low, just for me. "You think this ends with you seeing him today. There are things about Samuel you don't know, things that would break your heart worse than any of this has. Then I'll hear 'em from him, not from you, not ever again from you." She looked at me a long moment, and something in her face shifted, not to guilt exactly, more like recalculation, like a woman rearranging a plan that had just collapsed. Finally, she said, "Ask him about the accounts. Ask him where the money was really going. Ask your precious son what he knew and when he knew it." Then she walked off toward a black car at the curb and got in before I could ask her what in God's name that meant. Harrison came up beside me, watching her go. "Don't let it get in your head, Isaac. That's a scared woman throwing out smoke. But smoke still burns your eyes. And driving to Riverbend that afternoon, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever I was about to walk into wasn't just a reunion. It was a room with more truth in it than I was ready for." They took me to a small visiting room. Plain table, 2 chairs, a window with wire mesh in the glass. Gracie walked me down herself. Didn't say much, just squeezed my shoulder once before she opened the door. Samuel was thinner than I remembered, grayer at the temples than a man his age should be. When he saw me, he didn't move for a second, like he thought I might not be real. "Dad?" Just that one word, and I was across the room before I even decided to move, and I had my arms around my son for the first time in over a year. He held on to me the way he used to when he was 7 and scared of a thunderstorm. "They told me you didn't want to see me," he said into my shoulder. "They told me you said I embarrassed the family, that you needed distance while I got better." "I never said one word of that. I didn't even know you were sick, Samuel. I was told you were dead." He pulled back and looked at me like I'd spoken another language. "Dead?" We sat down at that little table and traded our two halves of the same lie. He'd been struggling, pills at first, for back pain after a work injury, then more than that. He'd agreed to treatment on his own, wanted to get better before he told me, didn't want me to worry. Bethany had told him I knew, that I was giving him space to focus on himself. She told me he was gone. 2 different lies, built to keep the same 2 people apart. Then I asked him what Bethany told me to ask, about the accounts. His face went pale. "She's been managing our finances the whole time I've been in here, power of attorney for the medical stuff, but I never—" He stopped, rubbed his hands over his face. "There was supposed to be $400,000 in our joint savings, insurance payout from the injury. I signed those forms myself. I haven't seen a statement in 2 months. Every time I asked, she said everything was fine, don't stress about money right now, focus on getting well." I thought about the $600,000 estate named in that fraudulent probate filing. I thought about a folder of insurance papers she'd asked me to witness, papers I never read. "I think," I said slowly, "she wasn't just trying to take your money after you were declared gone. I think she'd already been taking it before." We sat with that for a long moment, my son and I, 2 men who'd both been lied to by the same person in different rooms, hundreds of miles apart, each of us thinking the other had turned away. Harrison got the fraud investigation moving fast once Samuel gave his statement. It turned out the missing $400,000 had been moved in small pieces over 8 months into an account Bethany controlled alone, money meant for Samuel's care, for our family, quietly bled out while she told 2 vulnerable men that everything was fine, that they should trust her, that questions were a burden nobody needed. She was charged with fraud and elder financial exploitation, on top of what the court had already found regarding the false probate filing. I sat through part of that hearing, too. I watched her lawyer try to make it sound like confusion, like grief, like a woman doing her best under pressure. But paper trails don't confuse easily, and this one led straight back to her, transfer by transfer. She didn't go to prison. Not the first-time offenders rarely do, Harrison told me. Not for this. But she lost everything. The house, her nursing license, since some of the falsified medical authorizations ran through her credentials. Every dollar she'd moved, the court ordered returned, with interest, once the accounts were traced and frozen. I want to tell you something because I think it matters more than the money ever did. Samuel finished his treatment. Took him another 10 weeks, and I was there for every visiting day this time, every single one, sitting across that same little table, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting there so he'd know for certain I hadn't gone anywhere. The day he was discharged, we didn't say much in the car. He just reached over at one point and put his hand on my arm, the way I used to do to him when he was small and scared of something. "I kept asking for you," he said. "Every week. I thought you just didn't want to come." "I know," I said. "I know that now." I'm 71 years old. I spent most of my life being the man who doesn't make waves, who signs where he's told, who apologizes to walls. I don't think I'll ever be a loud man. That's not who I am. But I learned something sitting in that courtroom watching a woman who thought a quiet old man was an easy man to lie to. Quiet isn't the same as weak. It just took me a while, and it took almost losing my son twice to understand the difference. Samuel moved back to Dayton a few months later, into the house down the street from mine, the one that had sat empty since my neighbor passed. Some mornings he comes by for coffee before work. Some mornings I go to him. Nothing dramatic, just two men who nearly lost each other, making sure, quietly, every single day, that they don't lose each other again. That's the whole story. Not because I wanted the world to know what she did to us, but because somewhere out there, there's another quiet old man or another son who thinks his father gave up on him, being told exactly the lies we were told. Don't wait as long as we did to ask the hard questions.